It's so good, I'm like mad at it. In the spirit of Halloween, we're gonna be making something with pumpkins, but not just any pumpkins. These are sugar pumpkins or pie pumpkins. And we're gonna be breaking them down to a few things. We're gonna be making some roasted pumpkin seeds or pepitas. We're gonna be making pumpkin puree, and then we're gonna be making two things with that puree. Both of them lack any sort of pumpkin spice, which I find abhorrent. So let's get started. So to start, we've got two pie pumpkins. One of them is missing a stem, but it is otherwise all right. They are a little denser, they're a little thicker, they're a little oranger, but most importantly, they are sweeter. You can use a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin, which I have in the past. It just does not taste very good at all. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the tops. We are then going to cut the pumpkin in half. I should have brought a machete. It would have been thematically appropriate. It's not a beautiful cut. It's in fact quite a f***ed up cut, but thankfully we aren't going to be decorating these and no one will be able to judge our arts and craft ability.
Do you want me to try it?
You wanna try it?
It's not so hard.
Cockiness. It's the first stage of pumpkin cutting. Now that we've got them cut in half, we are just going to scoop out the insides and then we'll be worrying about that later. I normally think the inside of the pumpkins is is just the worst smell on this planet, but these are a lot more pleasant than normal jack-o'-lanterns.
Smells like a cantaloupe.
Yeah, it actually smells sweet and it smells like a melon. I'm gonna add a little bit of oil to each one. That seems like more than a little bit. And then I'm just going to rub the inside and the outside in the oil. We're gonna set them cut side down in the pan. Hopefully we can fit all four in there. Kind of slippery. It's like they're coated in oil. And we're gonna roast that at 350 for about 1 hour. In the meantime, I have filled our seed bowl with water and I'm going to do my best to clear out the pulp from the seeds.
Can I try?
Oh yeah. Showing off unsurpassable skill. Now that I have cleaned and washed these pumpkin seeds all by myself, we need to let them dry. And we're gonna be letting them dry for an entire day on a baking sheet lined with a towel.
Can you eat one of these like this?
You shouldn't. Beautiful. After an hour, our pumpkins are ready to take out.
Wow.
And I would say that while they were cooking, they legitimately smelled like cookies. Some sort of like baked good. They were so sweet. After taking them out though, they smell like a Chinese soup.
What?
Ooh, they're so soft. So I am just gonna flip these over, let them cool. And once they've cooled, we're gonna scrape out the flesh and throw it into a food processor. Now that our pumpkins have cooled a little bit, we can just peel away the skin. And I'm just gonna scoop this meat directly into our food processor. It's almost like a sweet potato. It smells a lot like a sweet potato.
Yes.
The texture and color are kind of a giveaway too. Each recipe that we have requires about a cup of puree. If you're gonna store any of the extra though, you wanna keep it in about 15-ounce increments. That's about what would come in a standard can. And this is about the texture you want. You can see it's smooth. It's just the consistency you would get right out of the can.
This may or may not be my motivation to help out.
So our pumpkin is pureed and we've got about a cup of it right here. I'm gonna set aside. And for the moment we are going to place a bit of parchment paper inside of a loaf pan because we're gonna start with making a pumpkin crumb cake. And I cannot emphasize enough, this is not pumpkin spice crumb cake, this is crumb cake made with a bit of pumpkin. There's a very big difference in that I despise the flavor of pumpkin spice and all of the nutmeg and it smells like bark shavings. I don't like it. Anyway, it's like arts and crafts. For this, I am spraying the pan, placing in my parchment paper, and then I'm gonna spray again, Into a bowl, we've got 240 grams of all-purpose flour, a dry spice mixture that's 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a half teaspoon of baking soda, and a half teaspoon of kosher salt, if I remember this correctly. We've added that in, and we're just going to mix that together a little bit. For our liquid ingredients, we have got 1/2 cup or 1 stick of melted butter. We've got our 1 cup of pumpkin puree. This is not a big enough bowl. I bet that is delicious. We have got 1 1/4 cup of, Jesus, white sugar, 1/3 of a cup of sour cream. And now we've got 1 teaspoon of vanilla and a much larger bowl because that wasn't working. And then we've got 2 eggs, which we are gonna do with 1 hand because this is YouTube, and apparently that's important. It adds nothing. I still have to wash my hands. We are just going to beat together with a hand mixer until it comes together. Once they've come together, we are just going to slowly add in our dry ingredients, about 1/3 at a time.
So good.
So our crumb cake mix we have set aside, and now we need to make the topping because the topping is what makes the crumb cake. Into a separate bowl, we are adding 1 cup of all-purpose flour. We're also adding a 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Finally, we also have another entire stick of butter that has been softened, and then we're just gonna stir them together. Man, I would eat this like that. It looks incredibly unhealthy. And now we are ready to assemble. We've got our batter mix, which we are just going to pour directly into the prepared pan. And then our crumb mixture just goes directly on top. These are going to be larger crumbs. I think I started life liking pumpkins just because of jack-o'-lanterns. But then later in life, I encountered like pumpkin spice lattes. I hated it. But now we've come full circle. I'm just delighted by how bad this is for you. And now we just throw this right back into the oven at 350, and it's going to be in there for about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes. Like with any cake, we're going to test it with a toothpick just to make sure it comes out clean. Or until we get bored of baking, I guess. And this looks like it is finished. We're just going to let that cool off to room temperature before we cut into it. I will say though that it smells absolutely fantastic. It smells like, well, it smells like crumb cake. Expectations are extremely high. If you're wondering why it's a new day, well, it smelled so good that we kind of stopped filming and we ate half of it. Can't say I'm proud of it, but can't say I regret it either. Anyway, we are going to make our second pumpkin puree recipe, and this time it is pumpkin cornbread. And it starts like all good recipes do with rubbing down a cast iron skillet with a tablespoon of butter. How could this be bad? Now into a medium bowl, we're going to combine our dry ingredients, which are a 1.5 cups of yellow cornmeal, a 1/2 cup or 60 grams of all-purpose flour. Then I've got a combination of 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, this feels like a test, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, know this, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. This we are going to whisk together and then set aside. Now into a much larger bowl, we're going to combine our liquid ingredients. So we're going to use 1 cup of pumpkin puree, 1 cup of buttermilk, a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and a room temperature egg. These I am going to whisk together before adding in a 1/4 cup or a 1/2 stick of melted butter. And like before, we're going to add our dry mixture to the liquid 1/3 at a time. And this is just going to go in the oven for about 25 minutes. Very quick, very easy to put together. So that finished in 25 minutes in our 375 degree oven, and it looks a little grainy for my taste, and it smells a little bit too much like dessert. I like a sweet cornbread, but this might be a little too much. Anyway, we now have our pumpkin seeds. This is 2 cups of pumpkin seeds. That's about 1 cup per pie pumpkin. They have dried out overnight, so we're gonna add them to a bowl. We're also gonna add in a tablespoon of melted butter. If there's one theme of this video, is melted butter. And then finally, we are gonna add 2 teaspoons of ranch mixture. Basically the same process as making Chex Mix, if that's a universal experience. Then we are adding this to a baking sheet lined with a silicone mat. We've got this at a pretty low temperature, 300 degrees. We're just gonna stir these every once in a while, and these just go in for 1 hour. I don't know why I said just, that's a long time. And we're gonna stir them after about 20 minutes. We now have all 3 pieces completed, and we are ready for our taste tests. And I think we need to go in order of savoriness. First, the most savory being our roasted ranch pumpkin seeds.
Some taste burnt.
Some taste burnt. We took them out early because they were getting a little dark. In the beginning, they smelled a lot like ranch. It's looking pretty good. They did get pretty dark pretty quickly though.
This is really good though. Some bitter notes at the end.
I feel like much more bitter than it should be. I love it. I think I should have pulled them out in like 40 minutes maybe.
35.
Now, we have got our pumpkin cornbread brushed with butter. It does cut smoothly. Still get that bitter ranch taste in my mouth. I don't love it.
Ooh, smells good.
It smells sweet though, doesn't it? It smells almost a bit like our crumb cake. Like there's cinnamon, there's sugar. That's a dessert. And I don't know if I want cornbread as a dessert. I want sweet cornbread.
This is sweet cornbread.
This is like a pumpkin corn cake.
I've always had cornbread that was sweet.
They are an interesting flavor together though. Pumpkin and corn.
This is good.
It is good.
I like this.
I like this too, but if there was like a dollop of ice cream on here, it wouldn't be out of place.
Why would it ever be out of place?
I could eat this with a slab of more butter on top.
Don't need any more butter on top. This is better than regular cornbread though, I think.
That's a dessert I would not mind eating. It's very soft, very tender, very sweet cornbread. This is not something though that you would taste this and never suspect that there was pumpkin in there. Even knowing that it's in there, I can't detect it. You get butter taste, you get corn, you get sweetness.
I like it because it's not overly sweet.
Yeah, it's just enough. I kind of want a little bit more, but I also know that we've got one last thing left to try. This is what we have left. I feel like we can, you know, polish this off right here, right now.
Let's split a slice.
Did I do something wrong?
I want all my crumbs, please. This is like the most moist pumpkin bread. It's so good, I'm like mad at it. This is a full day later, and it is so moist, it is so tender. If I just tried to imagine like a moist cake, it would be drier than this. This needs ice cream. Whipped cream.
It's like a really delicate pound cake, but a lot less punch you in the face sweet. It's just buttery. A little sneak peek into our private life.
Aim it down. Okay.
Wait, aim down?
Yeah.
Final thoughts?
Don't read the calorie content.
There's pumpkin in it. It's got fiber.
Get yourself some pumpkins. These are delicious.
Pie pumpkins. Way cooler than jack-o'-lanterns. If you wanted to, like you could carve a little something into the pumpkin as you roasted it. Like, oh, so cute. You still get to enjoy it. You don't have to watch it rot, and then you get to eat it. Thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and check us out every Wednesday and Sunday for new content.
Thank you. Bye.